Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to lean in and hear me clearly. Being rich is not an accident, it's a program. Wealth and poverty are not random conditions. They are programmed states of being that get written into the minds of individuals long before they ever touch a paycheck or open a bank account. From the moment you are born, you are being programmed by your family, by your culture, by your school system, and by the environment around you. If you grow up in a house where every conversation about money is laced with fear, scarcity, and lack, then that code begins to write itself into your subconscious. You start believing that money is hard to get, that it only comes to certain people, that there's never enough to go around. On the other hand, if you grow up in an environment where money is seen as a tool, as seed, as something that can be multiplied, then you receive a completely different program. The truth is, regardless of how you were raised, you can choose to rewrite the program and take control of the wealth code that runs your life. The challenge most people face is that they believe money is about external circumstances. They think it's about the economy, or the government, or their job, or their boss. But the reality is, those external things don't determine whether you are rich or poor. What determines it is the internal program you are running. Two people can be born in the same neighborhood, go to the same schools, face the same struggles, and one of them ends up wealthy while the other stays broke. Why? Because one rewrote their programming and the other kept running the same old system that was installed in them. That's why you can't just look at the conditions outside of you. You have to examine the code inside of you. See, when people hear the word program, they sometimes think it sounds robotic or mechanical, but it's actually liberating. If you're programmed into poverty, you can be reprogrammed into wealth. That means you don't have to accept the conditions you were born into. It means you don't have to stay stuck in the cycles of lack that your family may have lived in for generations. It means you can decide today to delete the poverty code and install the wealth code. Think about a computer. If the system is filled with bugs, it's going to malfunction no matter how new the hardware is. That's exactly how your financial life works. You can work harder, pick up more hours, chase more jobs, but if the program inside is corrupted by poverty thinking, the system will always crash. The key is not to upgrade your effort, but to upgrade your code. Once you realize that wealth and poverty are both programs, you stop blaming circumstances and start taking responsibility. You understand that being born poor is not your fault, but staying poor after you've been exposed to truth is a choice. You understand that you can surround yourself with new voices, new environments, and new information that begin to overwrite the old poverty files. Every book you read, every seminar you attend, every mentor you listen to, those are all new lines of code that shift your system toward abundance. When you program yourself for wealth, you begin to see opportunities where others see obstacles, you attract connections where others face rejection, and you start to move in alignment with prosperity. It's not magic, it's not luck, it's programming. Wealth doesn't happen by chance, and neither does poverty. Both are the result of the code you choose to run, and you have the power to decide today which program will define your future. Your mind set as the thermostat of your financial life, and it will always set the temperature of your income, no matter how much effort you put in or how many opportunities come your way. You cannot earn beyond the level of belief you hold about yourself and about money. If you believe that money is hard to make, then every opportunity you come across will feel out of reach or too risky. If you believe that you are only worth a certain amount, then even if someone tries to pay you more, you will sabotage yourself back down to the level of your internal program. That's why you can take two people with the same skill set, the same education, and the same work ethic, and one will be financially free while the other struggles to pay rent. The difference is not in talent or effort. The difference is in mindset. The human mind is like fertile soil. Whatever seeds you plant in it, that's what will grow. If you plant seeds of doubt, fear, and scarcity, you will reap a harvest of lack and limitation. If you plant seeds of faith, abundance, and possibility, you will reap wealth, opportunity, and prosperity. The soil doesn't argue with you, it simply grows what you plant. Your mindset works the same way. If you constantly tell yourself you'll never get ahead, then your actions, habits, and decisions will line up with that belief, and you'll never get ahead. But if you convince yourself that wealth is available to you, that abundance is your natural state, then you'll begin to notice the opportunities that align with that belief. The money in your hand will always eventually match the programming in your head. This is why so many lottery winners lose their fortune within a few years. They had a sudden increase in income, but their mindset didn't rise with it. Their inner thermostat was still set at broke. And because your life will always align with the setting of that thermostat, they unconsciously spent, wasted, and mismanaged until their finances returned to match their mindset. On the other hand, you can take a person with a wealthy mindset and strip them of their resources, and they will rebuild again and again because the wealth wasn't just in their wallet. It was in their way of thinking. The Bible says, "As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he." That is not a poetic statement, it's a law of life. Your dominant thoughts create your reality. If you constantly think of lack, you attract lack. If you think of opportunities, you attract opportunities. If you think of yourself as valuable, capable, and worthy, then you begin to act in ways that demand compensation that reflects that worth. Your mindset is like a magnet pulling experiences, relationships, and money into your life that are in alignment with your core beliefs. So the question is, what do you really believe about money? Do you believe it's scarce and hard to come by, or do you believe it flows easily to those who serve and create value? Do you believe that rich people are greedy, or do you believe that wealth is a tool for impact and influence? Do you believe you were created to struggle, or do you believe you were created for abundance? Because whatever you believe, you will unconsciously create. If you see yourself as broke, every decision you make will reinforce that identity. If you see yourself as wealthy, every decision you make will move you closer to wealth. Changing your mindset doesn't happen overnight, but it begins with awareness. You start catching the limiting thoughts as they rise, and you replace them with empowering beliefs. Instead of saying, "I can't afford it," you train yourself to ask, "How can I afford it?" Instead of saying, "Money doesn't grow on trees," you tell yourself, "Money grows in my mind and my actions." Every affirmation, every new thought, every intentional word you speak is another way of adjusting your internal thermostat upward. When your mindset matches abundance, money begins to flow toward you in ways that seem almost miraculous. You'll meet the right people, stumble upon the right opportunities, and attract resources that you never noticed before. But it won't be luck. It will be alignment. The money didn't change first. Your mindset did, and then the money followed. That's why it is absolutely critical to understand that your financial ceiling is not set by the government, your boss, or even the economy. It is set by you, and the moment you decide to elevate your beliefs, you elevate your income. Your mindset is the key that unlocks the wealth already waiting for you. Transformation never begins with money in the hand. It begins with renewing the mind. You cannot put new results into an old mindset and expect them to last. This is why so many people chase success, work harder, or grab every opportunity they see, yet they end up frustrated. They are trying to put fresh wine into old wineskins. The old container cannot hold the new blessing, and so it breaks down. The truth is, if you want your life to look different, if you want your finances to change, if you want to live in abundance instead of lack, you must renew your mind. It is not just a suggestion, it is a requirement. Renewal means more than thinking a few positive thoughts or repeating affirmations without conviction. Renewal means stripping away old thought patterns and replacing them with new ones until they become the dominant way you think and operate. For years, you may have been programmed to believe that money is evil, that wanting wealth makes you greedy, or that success is reserved for people born into privilege. Those are weeds in your mental garden, and they must be uprooted. Renewal means not just pulling out those weeds, but also planting seeds of truth, seeds of abundance, seeds of possibility, and watering them consistently until they grow stronger than the weeds that used to dominate your soil. The challenge is that most people are more loyal to their old programming than they are committed to their new destiny. They would rather stay in the comfort of familiar scarcity than risk the discomfort of new abundance. The mind does not naturally renew itself, it must be renewed intentionally. That means reading books that expand your thinking, listening to mentors who challenge your perspective, surrounding yourself with people who see wealth as a tool instead of a curse, and replacing the lies of lack with the truth of abundance. This is why Scripture says, "Be transformed by the renewing of your mind." It does not say by renewing your job, or by renewing your paycheck, or by renewing your hustle. True transformation begins inside, and once the inside shifts, the outside must follow. Think about a caterpillar transforming into a butterfly. The transformation does not happen because the caterpillar crawls faster or eats more leaves. It happens because it goes into a cocoon and allows a complete restructuring to take place. The caterpillar dissolves into almost nothing, and then it is rebuilt into a butterfly. That is what renewal is. You cannot become a financial butterfly with a caterpillar mindset. You must be willing to go through the discomfort of changing your entire thought structure so that you can fly in arenas you once crawled in. When you renew your mind, you begin to see possibilities where others only see problems. You start to hear opportunity in conversations where others only hear complaints. You notice doors opening that were always there, but your old programming kept you blind to them. A renewed mind cannot be limited by past failures, because it understands that failure is feedback, not finality. A renewed mind doesn't hold on to the bitterness of what went wrong, but instead extracts the lesson and uses it as a stepping stone toward what will go right. Renewal also means aligning your beliefs with truth instead of tradition. Maybe you were taught that rich people are all dishonest, and so you subconsciously avoid wealth because you don't want to be bad. Maybe you were taught that money is scarce, so every time you have a little, you cling to it in fear, and in doing so, you block the flow of more coming to you. When you renew your mind, you start to realize that wealth is not about greed, it's about stewardship. You understand that the more resources you manage well, the more impact you can have, the more lives you can touch, and the more legacy you can leave. The renewing of the mind is not a one-time event, but a daily discipline. Just like your body requires food and water every day, your mind requires new input of truth, inspiration, and knowledge. Left unattended, it will naturally drift back towards scarcity and fear, because that is the program most of the world runs on. But when you choose every day to feed your mind with new ideas, new possibilities, and new truths, you are continually writing the code of abundance and wealth into your system. Over time, the old patterns lose their power, and the new program becomes your default operating system. Transformation by the renewing of the mind is not just a principle for spiritual growth, it is a principle for financial growth, relational growth, and personal growth. When you change the way you think, you change the way you live. The quality of your life is simply the visible evidence of the invisible patterns of your thoughts. If you want new evidence, you must install new patterns. Wealth does not start in the wallet, it starts in the mind. Poverty does not begin with empty pockets, it begins with empty beliefs. Renew your mind, and everything else in your life will begin to align with the new program you have chosen. The words you use about money are not just harmless expressions. They are instructions to your subconscious mind. Your brain is a computer, and language is the code that tells it how to function. When someone with a poor mindset says, "I can't afford it," what they are really doing is shutting down the possibility of creativity, resourcefulness, and problem solving. That phrase is like pressing the power button on a computer and turning the whole system off. Nothing else happens because the command has already canceled out all options. On the other hand, when someone with a wealthy mindset says, "How can I afford it?" they are programming their brain to search for answers, to generate possibilities, to find pathways. The difference between those two statements may sound small, but the difference in outcome is massive. Language is the bridge between thought and action. What you say repeatedly becomes what you believe, and what you believe shapes what you do. If you constantly speak words of limitation, you will develop a belief system rooted in limitation. If you consistently speak words of opportunity, you will develop a belief system rooted in abundance. A poor person will look at an obstacle and say, "I can't." A rich person will look at the same obstacle and say, "How can I?" That simple shift in language keeps the wealthy mindset in motion while the poverty mindset remains paralyzed. Think of a child learning to walk. If the child fell down and the parents said, "You can't do this, walking isn't for you," the child would internalize that language and stop trying. But because the language most children hear is, "You can do it, try again, get back up," they develop persistence and eventually succeed. Adults are no different. The language you feed yourself daily determines whether you persist or whether you quit. If you tell yourself over and over again, "I'll never get out of debt, I'll never have enough, money isn't for people like me," then your subconscious accepts those statements as truth and directs your actions to align with them. This is why Scripture says, "Life and death are in the power of the tongue." The words you speak over your finances either give life to abundance or give death to prosperity. If you continually speak lack, you will live lack. If you continually speak increase, you will begin to live increase. Language shapes mindset, and mindset shapes reality. Wealthy people are intentional about the words they allow into their environment because they know that words are seeds. Every declaration you make about money is a seed, and it will eventually produce a harvest. The question is, are you planting seeds of scarcity or seeds of abundance? When you begin to change your language, your brain starts to rewire itself. Neuroscientists call it neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to form new connections and pathways. Every time you catch yourself saying, "I can't afford it," and instead say, "How can I afford it?" you are rewiring your brain for creativity and abundance. Every time you stop yourself from saying, "I'm broke," and instead say, "I'm building wealth," you are training your subconscious to expect increase. Over time, these small linguistic shifts reshape your entire financial destiny. Consider how wealthy people talk about money. They don't say, "I hope I have enough to survive." They say, "I'm looking for new opportunities to multiply my wealth." They don't say, "I can't spend on that." They say, "I choose not to invest in that because my money has a better assignment." They don't say, "I can't." They say, "How can I?" That language forces their brains to stay in solution mode, and as a result, solutions continually appear. The great thing is that you don't have to be rich to start talking like the rich. You don't need $1 million in your bank account to start speaking the language of abundance. In fact, it's the language that comes first, and the wealth follows after. When you discipline yourself to replace the language of poverty with the language of prosperity, you are writing new financial code into your subconscious. Eventually, your actions and results will align with the new language, just as they aligned with the old language before. If you want to change your financial reality, start with your words. Eliminate phrases like "I can't afford it," "I'll never get out of this," or "Money doesn't come easy." Replace them with "I'm finding ways to afford it," "I'm creating a path out of this," and "Money flows to me as I create value." The language you use is not just communication, it is creation. Every word you speak about your finances is building the program that will either keep you broke or make you rich. Wealthy language produces a wealthy mindset, and a wealthy mindset produces a wealthy life. Hard work is one of the most misunderstood concepts when it comes to money. From the time we are children, most of us are told, "If you just work hard, you'll succeed." And while that sounds noble, it is not entirely true. Hard work by itself is not the key to wealth. If effort alone created millionaires, then the people who sweat the most, grind the most hours, and break their backs on the job would be the richest among us. But look around. Construction workers, factory laborers, nurses, and school teachers work harder than almost anyone, and many of them still struggle paycheck to paycheck. They are putting in effort, but their effort is running on the wrong program. Hard work without strategy doesn't create freedom, it creates exhaustion. The truth is, hard work is necessary, but it must be directed by wisdom, strategy, and leverage. Wealthy people don't necessarily work harder than poor people, they work differently. While the poor are trained to trade time for money, the rich are trained to trade value for money. That shift makes all the difference. Time is limited, you only have 24 hours in a day. Value, however, is unlimited because your creativity, your ability to solve problems, and your willingness to create can scale far beyond your personal hours. The nurse who works a 12-hour shift gets paid once for that shift, but the author who writes a book puts in effort one time and can get paid again and again for years to come. Both involve work, but only one involves leverage. The poverty mindset glorifies struggle. It tells people that working themselves into the ground is honorable, even if it leaves them broke and exhausted. But the wealthy mindset glorifies results. It asks, what system can I create that pays me even when I'm not present? It doesn't reject hard work, it redirects it. Rich people still put in effort, but their effort is invested in building systems, assets, and opportunities that continue to produce after the initial work is done. They don't run endlessly on the hamster wheel of trading time for dollars. They build the wheel, sell the wheel, or rent the wheel out to others. Another problem with relying on hard work alone is that it leaves no room for creativity or growth. When all of your energy is consumed just trying to survive, you rarely have the space to think about thriving. That's why some of the hardest working people remain stuck. They don't have the time or mental energy to step back, learn new skills, or invest in building wealth. Wealthy people, on the other hand, create margin in their lives. They use systems, teams, and investments to buy back their time so they can focus on vision and strategy. They understand that their brain is more valuable than their back, and their ideas are worth more than their sweat. If you want to shift from hard work that leads to exhaustion to hard work that leads to wealth, you must reprogram how you see effort. Stop asking, how many hours can I put in? And start asking, how much value can I create? Stop measuring success by how busy you are and start measuring it by how effective you are. The rich are not necessarily busier than the poor, but they are more intentional with their work. They work on high-value activities that multiply results instead of low-value tasks that consume time. Think about the farmer who plants seeds. It takes work to till the ground, plant the crop, and water the soil, but once the crop grows, he doesn't have to keep replanting every day. The harvest keeps producing from that initial effort. Now compare that to someone who goes into the forest every day with an axe and chops down wood to sell. The farmer works smart and creates something that grows. The woodcutter works endlessly and starts from scratch every single morning. Both work hard, but only one builds wealth. Hard work is honorable, but it is not enough. It must be paired with wisdom, creativity, and systems. You don't get rich by doing more of what's keeping you broke. You get rich by changing the kind of work you do, by elevating your focus from labor to leverage, from effort to efficiency, from survival to strategy. Wealth does not come to the person who sweats the most. It comes to the person who solves the most, creates the most, and scales the most. Don't throw away hard work, redirect it, reprogram it, and align it with principles that lead to abundance instead of exhaustion. Wealth is not something that shows up because you consume more. It shows up because you create more. One of the greatest deceptions that keeps people broke is the belief that having money means spending it as quickly as possible on things that make them look rich. That's why so many people buy expensive clothes, flashy cars, or the latest gadgets before they even build a solid foundation of wealth. They are running on a program that says money is for consumption, But here's the truth. Consumers stay broke, creators become wealthy. If you want to step into abundance, you must shift from being someone who spends to someone who produces. Poor people buy liabilities and call them assets. They finance a new car and convince themselves it's an investment. They take a vacation on credit and tell themselves they deserve it. They buy things that lose value the moment they purchase them, and then they wonder why their bank account is always empty. Rich people think differently. They acquire real assets, things that put money back into their pockets instead of taking it out. They buy businesses, stocks, real estate, intellectual property. They create products, systems, and services that generate income long after the initial work is done. For the rich, money is not for consumption. It is for multiplication. This is why the wealthy often appear frugal compared to those trying to look wealthy. The person living in debt with designer clothes might look rich on the surface, but their financial reality is fragile. The wealthy person might drive a modest car or live in a simple house in the beginning, but behind the scenes they are acquiring assets that will pay them for a lifetime. They understand that every dollar spent on consumption is a dollar that could have been invested into creation. And the more you invest into creation, the more consumption you can enjoy later without ever running out. Another key difference is the perspective on delayed gratification. Consumers want pleasure now, even if it costs them later. Creators are willing to invest now so they can enjoy multiplied returns later. A consumer will blow their entire paycheck on entertainment, while a creator will take part of that paycheck and start a side business, build an online product, or invest in learning a new skill. Over time, those investments turn into streams of income that far outweigh what was sacrificed in the beginning. The program of wealth always includes creation first, consumption second. Think of a fruit tree. If you eat the seed, the pleasure lasts for a moment, but the opportunity is gone. If you plant the seed, you create something that produces fruit for years, and you can enjoy both the fruit and the seeds it produces over and over again. Money works the same way. Poor people consume the seed, rich people plant the seed. The harvest doesn't come immediately, but when it comes, it continues to provide. Shifting from consumption to creation also changes how you see yourself. Consumers view themselves as customers of the marketplace, always looking for the next thing to buy. Creators view themselves as contributors to the marketplace, asking what they can offer, what problem they can solve, what value they can add. When you see yourself as a contributor instead of just a customer, money begins to flow toward you instead of away from you. The world does not reward people for how much they consume. It rewards people for how much they create. This doesn't mean you never enjoy your money. It doesn't mean you never spend. It means you prioritize creation first, so that your consumption is funded by the fruit of your assets instead of the sweat of your labor. Imagine buying a car not from your paycheck, but from the rental income of a property you own. Imagine taking vacations not from your savings account, but from the royalties of a book or a course you created. That's the difference between living as a consumer and living as a creator. Wealth is created, not consumed. If you want to reprogram yourself to be rich, start asking, what can I build? What can I produce? What can I create that will generate income beyond me? The moment you make that shift, you stop chasing money and start building wealth. Consumption is temporary, but creation is permanent. Consumers enjoy for a moment and then return to lack. Creators sacrifice for a moment and then enjoy abundance for a lifetime. The question is, which program will you choose to run? Money has often been misunderstood, misquoted, and misrepresented. People say things like money is the root of all evil, when in truth the Bible says the love of money is the root of all evil. Money itself is not evil. Money is neutral. It takes on the character of the person who holds it. In reality, money is nothing more than a certificate of appreciation. When you solve a problem for someone, when you provide a service, when you create value, they give you money as a way of saying thank you. That's all money is. The more problems you solve, the more thank you certificates you receive. If you start looking at money in this way, you will remove the guilt, shame, and confusion around wealth, and you will begin to see it as a tool of exchange that reflects the value you deliver to others. Think about it. When you go to a restaurant and enjoy a meal, you pay the bill. You don't see the payment as evil. You see it as appreciation for the chef, the staff, and the experience you just received. When you pay your barber or hairstylist, you're not handing over something bad. You're showing appreciation for the service that improved your appearance and made you feel confident. Money simply moves in the direction of value. If you want more money, you have to create more value. If you want to create more value, you have to solve more problems. And if you want to solve more problems, you have to develop your skills, your creativity, and your willingness to serve. When people demonize money, they unconsciously push it away. If you believe money makes people corrupt, then you will avoid it even if you don't realize you're doing it. Your subconscious mind will never allow you to attract something you secretly despise. That's why some people can never break through financially. They have a negative relationship with money. But once you understand that money is simply a certificate of appreciation, you realize that having more of it doesn't make you bad. It means you have served more people. It means you have provided more value. It means you have contributed more solutions. Imagine a doctor who saves lives every day. Should they not be compensated well for their expertise? Of course they should, because their service is of high value. Imagine an entrepreneur who creates jobs for hundreds of people and products that improve the lives of thousands more. Shouldn't they receive large amounts of appreciation in the form of money? Absolutely. The more impact someone has, the more money flows toward them, not because money is the goal, but because money follows value. Now consider the opposite. If you withhold your gifts, if you avoid solving problems, if you consume more than you contribute, why should money flow to you? The marketplace does not reward consumption, it rewards contribution. People do not pay you for your need, they pay you for your service. This is why entitlement thinking keeps people broke. Need alone doesn't move money, value does. If money is a certificate of appreciation, then the only way to earn more of it is to deserve more of it by increasing your contribution. This truth also brings freedom. You no longer have to envy wealthy people, because instead of seeing them as lucky or dishonest, you can study the value they created and learn from it. You no longer have to feel guilty about earning more, because you understand that your income is a reflection of how much appreciation you've accumulated by helping others. Money is not the enemy. Ignorance about money is. Poverty is not noble. It is simply the absence of sufficient contribution or value creation. When you begin to think of money as a certificate of appreciation, everything changes. You stop chasing money for its own sake and start chasing opportunities to serve. You stop measuring your worth by your bank balance and start measuring it by the problems you solve and the lives you touch. And as you create more solutions, as you provide more value, those certificates of appreciation will begin to pile up. The wealthier you become, the more people you've helped, and the more people you've helped, the greater your impact, your influence, and your legacy. So stop fearing money, stop resisting it, stop speaking against it, see it for what it really is, a reflection of the service you provide to the world. If you want more, simply serve more, solve more, and create more. Money is not the root of evil, it is the fruit of value. Treat it as a certificate of appreciation, and you will begin to reprogram yourself to be rich, not just in finances, but in impact and in purpose. Wealth does not appear by accident. It is not a lottery ticket, nor is it a miracle that drops out of the sky. Wealth is the inevitable result of systems, disciplines, and consistent action. If you look closely at the wealthy, you will notice patterns, habits, routines, and strategies they follow regardless of circumstance. They don't leave their finances to chance. They build systems that guarantee growth. If you want to reprogram yourself to be rich, you must learn to live by principles and disciplines that produce wealth instead of waiting on luck to change your circumstances. One of the most important disciplines is the ability to manage money intentionally. Wealthy people tell their money where to go. Poor people wonder where it went. When you create a system of budgeting, saving, investing, and multiplying your income, you are taking control of your financial destiny. The system itself protects you from emotional decisions. Without a system, money slips through your fingers, disappearing into trivial purchases and forgotten expenses. With a system, every dollar has a purpose, and over time, those purposeful dollars turn into assets, and those assets turn into freedom. Discipline also shows up in the way the wealthy approach their habits. They commit to constant learning, reading, and developing skills. They understand that the more value they can bring to the marketplace, the more money will flow to them. That's why wealthy people are often avid readers, lifelong learners, and students of success. Their discipline is not just in managing money, but in managing themselves, their time, their focus, their energy. If you cannot manage yourself, you cannot manage wealth. Riches will always escape undisciplined hands. Another vital discipline is the practice of delayed gratification. This principle alone separates the wealthy from the broke. Broke people want the reward now and are willing to sacrifice the future for present pleasure. Wealthy people are willing to sacrifice today's pleasure for tomorrow's reward. They invest before they indulge, they create before they consume, they sow before they reap. It takes discipline to resist the temptation of spending everything you earn. It takes discipline to choose investment over impulse, but that discipline compounds and eventually it creates a life where you can enjoy abundance without fear of running out. Wealth also comes from building systems of income. A job alone will rarely make anyone rich because it trades time for money, and time is limited. The wealthy discipline themselves to create income streams that work even when they don't. Businesses, real estate, royalties, investments, these are systems that generate cash flow independent of their daily labor. They build machines that keep running. Without discipline, most people never create these machines. With discipline, anyone can. You don't need to be born into wealth. You need to be committed enough to build the systems that sustain it. Consistency is another form of discipline. Doing the right thing once will not change your life. Doing the right thing over and over will. Wealth is rarely the result of a single big decision. It's the outcome of thousands of small, wise choices made consistently. Choosing to save instead of spend. Choosing to invest instead of waste. Choosing to learn instead of entertain yourself endlessly. These choices, repeated over time, compound into extraordinary results. Consistency is boring, but wealth is built on boring things done faithfully. Wealth without discipline collapses. That's why many people who win the lottery or come into sudden money often lose it within years. They had money, but they didn't have the system or the discipline to keep it. Discipline is the foundation that sustains wealth, and without it, no amount of money will last. This is why you must develop habits before riches come. If you can manage little, you will be trusted with much. If you cannot manage little, more will only magnify the chaos. So stop hoping for luck, stop waiting for a miracle, and stop believing wealth is only for the chosen few. Reprogram yourself to embrace discipline and to build systems that work even when your emotions don't. Create routines that force you to save, invest, and grow. Train yourself to think long term, to resist impulse, and to choose purpose over pleasure. Once you commit to discipline and build wealth, producing systems, financial abundance stops being a possibility and becomes a certainty. The final and perhaps most powerful key to reprogramming yourself to be rich is recognizing the power of mindset. Wealth is not first an external condition, it is an internal program. You cannot consistently create on the outside what you don't first believe on the inside. If you believe you are destined to struggle, you will subconsciously sabotage your opportunities. If you believe money is evil, you will push it away even while saying you want more. If you believe wealth is only for the lucky or the privileged, you will never take the actions that could create it for you. But when you adopt a mindset of abundance, everything begins to change. Your thoughts determine your choices determine your actions, and your actions create your results. That means every dollar in your pocket is the fruit of a thought you accepted, believed, and acted upon. The rich have a mindset that says, opportunities are everywhere, and I am capable of creating value. The poor have a mindset that says, opportunities are scarce, and life is happening to me. The first mindset leads to creativity, resilience, and boldness. The second mindset leads to fear, excuses, and stagnation. If you want to shift your financial reality, you must first shift your financial psychology. One of the most vital mindset shifts is moving from scarcity to abundance. Scarcity thinking says, if someone else wins, I lose. There's not enough for everybody. Abundance thinking says the marketplace is limitless. Value can always be created. Money can always be multiplied. With scarcity, you cling tightly to every dollar and are afraid to invest, so you remain stuck. With abundance, you understand that money is a seed, and when planted, it multiplies. This belief gives you the courage to invest in yourself, your ideas, and your future. Another mindset shift is from being problem-focused to being solution-focused. Poor people see problems and complain. Wealthy people see problems and create solutions. Every product, every service, every innovation you see in the marketplace exists because someone decided to solve a problem. The greater the problem solved, the greater the reward received. If you train your mind to stop asking, why is this happening to me, and start asking, what solution can I create from this? You begin to tap into the mindset of wealth. Money flows towards solutions, and solutions are birthed in the minds of those who think abundantly. Gratitude is also a key part of the wealthy mindset. When you are grateful, you signal to your mind that you already live in abundance. Gratitude opens your creativity, sharpens your perspective, and keeps you from living in constant comparison. A mind filled with gratitude is fertile ground for new ideas and opportunities. A mind filled with bitterness or envy cannot produce wealth because it is too focused on what others have instead of creating something of its own. Gratitude is not just an emotion, it is a wealth magnet. Belief is another crucial element. You will never outturn your self-image. If you believe you are only worth survival-level living, that's exactly what you will produce. But if you believe you are capable of creating overflow, your actions will align with that belief. Wealthy people expect to win, so they act boldly. Poor people expect to lose, so they hesitate, procrastinate, and settle. Your results will always rise or fall to the level of your expectations. That is why reprogramming your mind is not optional, it is essential. Finally, persistence flows from the right mindset. The journey to wealth is never smooth. You will face setbacks, failures, and disappointments. Without a strong mindset, you will quit. But when your mind is programmed for wealth, you understand that every failure is feedback, every setback is a setup for a comeback, and every obstacle is a chance to grow stronger. You don't stop when it's hard, you keep moving until it's done. Wealth requires persistence, and persistence comes from a mindset that refuses to see defeat as final. Wealth begins in the mind. Before it shows up in your account, it must first show up in your beliefs, your expectations, and your perspective. Reprogram yourself to think abundance, solutions, gratitude, belief, and persistence. When your mindset shifts, your habits shift. When your habits shift, your results shift, and when your results shift, wealth becomes inevitable. True riches are not just about money, they are about the person you become in the process.